piece is a standard, really, but we don't know it very well. La Création du Monde by Milhaud. I speak French. So
See,
can you do
I
that?
can't do that.
Well, okay, I'll do
My
it
French
for
is
you.
very, it's pretty bad.
It's
I'm still
okay.
working on it. Italian's much easier for me,
Well,
but French is a
that.
whole other.
Well, anyway, it's just a great
Yes.
work, and early 22, 23, I guess.
Yeah,
And
23, yes.
Such experimenting with the solo saxophone,
Yeah,
really.
yes.
And of course, saxophone is part of this ensemble as well. And the ensemble is really amazing. That, like, I'm thinking of the
Yes.
second movement. Well, actually, it's the first movement after the overture, but with that jazz, I mean, it's a fugue. And each of the voices is another funky instrument sound, and real jagged and rhythmic. I mean, it's really great.
It
and
is.
then the sexy saxophone comes back. It does
It
again and
does.
again, right? And it does it that last
It's-
movement as well, right?
Well, it's definitely one of the most famous saxophone pieces
Is it?
for involving an orchestra. And I don't know if you can call this an orchestra. It's 17 musicians.
Right.
And Milhaud was one of the first composers to successfully fuse jazz and art music.
Yeah.
You know, who do you think of when you think those successful mixing of jazz and classical? Probably, for me, it's Gershwin, Ravel,
Of course.
Bernstein, and he was actually before any of these guys.
Oh, sure.
He was before them. So a lot of people think Gershwin was the first to successfully fuse the two, but he did this 4 months before the premiere of Rhapsody in Blue, actually,
Oh,
in
is
New
that
York.
right?
Yeah, right before the premiere.
And he would have heard Rhapsody, because aren't there some glimmers of the Rhapsody in Blue in the?
I don't know if it's quoted, but it's very similar.
Yeah.
In terms of the oboe solo that comes in later, it's the blues scale.
Yeah.
So he takes a lot from the blues scale, and I know in Rhapsody in Blue, there's a lot of bluesy elements, of course. But he went to Harlem in the 20s.
Yeah,
I think it was 1920, and he heard these different jazz groups, and that was his inspiration then for this piece, the Creation of the World. And it's a ballet. It's not even a symphonic work. It's a ballet that was choreographed and danced to. And it's funny, I read it got really lousy reviews when it was premiered, but now 10 years after that, all the critics were saying, you know, Milhaud was the greatest composer to successfully create jazz and classical music. At the time, they thought the music was meant for the dance hall or a jazz club. It wasn't meant for a concert hall. But then they changed their minds. So I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, wow, it's a great piece. And
Yeah.
It's what, 10 minutes, 15 minutes? Not much.
It's
more
about
than
15 minutes of music, yeah. It's probably the longest piece on our program, actually, because we're doing 5 pieces.
That's right.
And there's 6 movements, I want to say. And each movement is, again, jazz influenced. The blues are in there. There's lots of different syncopations and dance rhythms. But then, like you said, there's classical elements too with the fugue, counterpoint.
Right.
It's really, the saxophone writing is tremendous. It's gorgeous writing.
Yeah, it's so lyrical, much of it, you know, particularly, finally the last movement where everything calms down again too. It's just really sweet as it kind of fades away there, so.
And you get to hear the flutes, they have a flutter tongue. So it's this kind of,
okay, cool.
it's like this really neat effect at the end where everything fades away. And it's the last remnants of that theme, ba-dee-da-dee-da, but slower, and it's in a flutter tongue.
Yeah, okay, that's great. Now, have you ever conducted